Two-dimensional action games are very common on the Nintendo Switch. In principle, new titles come out every week, and sometimes you have to sort carefully to find a gem. This week, Sword of the Vagrant has been released, and the question is whether this is a good platform game. Broadly speaking, this game is about four things: kill enemies, kill bosses, make your character stronger, and join Vivian's quest to find her missing father. It's a woman with superpowers, and when she rests, she does so standing with the sword in her hand. She is ready to attack in any situation. The journey begins on a boat that unfortunately capsizes. Our hero manages to survive, however, the adventure begins in a place unknown to her. It is now that Vivian must interact with new people, those who wish her well, but also those who exert their powers over her. Quite an interesting narrative actually. The game contains lots of small cutscenes where you get to know the characters in depth, but also take part in some dramatic events. Sword of the Vagrant is a game that includes a well-measured system to create a stronger character. First, you can equip yourself with different swords. They can have different strengths, such as, for example, fire, ice or lightning attacks. The further into the game you go, the better swords you find, that is, they do more damage. It is also possible to upgrade your weapons by spending mana points. That way a sword can do even more damage. You can also find armor that strengthens your defenses. In principle it's the same as for the weapons. The equipment is upgradable to strengthen your defensive capabilities. There is also a well-developed skill tree where you can buy more defensive powers, new skills or more attack power. In other words, character progression is an essential part of the game, but it also means that it can become a bit grind heavy. To be able to buy new skills you need a lot of points, and if you intend to complete the entire skill tree, then you need to spend a lot of time killing enemies and collecting new points. At the same time, I find it entertaining to gain access to new attacks or feel myself getting stronger. It is needed because many enemies get stronger the further into the game you go. When it comes to the control, it quickly becomes clear that there are problems. It is certainly an ambitious game that gives the player the opportunity to vary the attacks through the use of sword combinations and magic spells. And in principle it feels good to swing the sword and relatively easy to damage the opponent. Rather, the problems lie in the hero's movement patterns. Jumping in this game is a nightmare. There is a short delay every time you want to jump, in combination with the fact that you need speed to jump far. Without speed, you basically just jump straight into the air without moving forward. But to accelerate, you have to click twice on the left stick, and then you can unfortunately lose control of the character. It becomes particularly disturbing when you have to jump between platforms. There is a risk of accidentally slipping off a platform due to high speed. It almost feels like sliding around on a hockey rink. However, there are unlockable skills that can help. For example, double jump, which makes it somewhat easier to reach certain platforms. It also feels like there is a delay in how you move from left to right. The movements do not happen immediately, but you have to watch a short animation before moving in a new direction. I haven't really seen this as a problem in a sense that it becomes more difficult to win over the enemy. It's mostly that it feels awkward. As for the visuals, the developers have created many varied environments. At first you mostly run around rural villages and dense forests, but after a while you explore in snow-covered areas or gloomy dungeons. Something that looks really nice is the fog that covers parts of the forest areas. It gives a slightly eerie feeling and contributes to a nice atmosphere. However, the rain effects look less good. Look at the bottom edge of the image. It looks like it's raining outside of the image, which gives the impression that the rain has its own layer that is just imposed without regard to the rest of the environment. The rain should land on the ground here, but not there. When it comes to the frame rate, the game runs at 30 FPS. Most encounters with enemies usually takes place against a static background, so what affects the frame rate is usually the heroes and enemies' animations and all the effects that come from various spells, projectiles and sword attacks. It is fairly stable around 30 FPS with occasional instances when it drops down to 27-28. It gets worse when you run around certain areas. Here the hero moves back and forth through a forest area, and it becomes problematic to establish and maintain a stable frame rate. It drops to 26-27 FPS. The side-scrolling looks quite choppy in my opinion. I have played the game on normal difficulty, and what I noticed is that it's possible to ignore most of the unlockable skills. In other words, you can button mash your way through the entire game. I rarely needed to execute specific combos to eliminate an enemy, rather I used a simple tactic that involved pressing Y repeatedly followed by X for a slower but stronger attack, and occasionally I used some ranged magic spells. It was enough to get me through the entire game, but some unlockable attacks can be fun to use, for example jumping into the air and drop kicking an enemy. It's a decently entertaining and challenging game, but it's also quite repetitive. It becomes predictable to fight the enemies, kill the bosses, find new weapons or armor. What stands out is the game's narrative, which I find quite interesting and offers something unexpected, but I can still recommend the game. You get quite a lot of content for $10. Feel free to subscribe to my channel, I review new games every week. Have a good day, see ya!